All right, so sorry about that. I didn't start the recording, but I talked a little bit about this mini project. Again, the quiz is going to pop up here after class. It'll be sometime this afternoon to pop up. I'll send an announcement out. It'll be when I upload this video and everything else. All right, today we're going to focus on that first project. Again, the due dates. It says Sunday at midnight, but if you need more time, take more time. I don't want you to rush through it. I want you to figure out what's going on here, because otherwise you're going to be lost in projects later down the road. So let's get started on that project, because it's going to take us a little bit of time. And because this is a different way of doing things in terms of using GitHub and doing all that, I just want to walk through the whole part. So let's look at the projects. If you guys are familiar with the 360 class, you remember how I do it. So I just give you a bunch of bulleted to-dos, and then how you go about accomplishing that stuff doesn't matter to me. So first one, initial comments, project at the top. That's what I was talking about before. You're just going to copy and paste what was there on the first section. If you guys didn't see that in the recording, let's go back here to learning modules. And you're just going to copy and paste this at the top of your project and kind of go from there. All right. Let's go back to the other side. There we go. All right. The next 5 points is going to be the proper import of the packages used. So in this project, the whole goal is that you're going to use packages Numpy and Matplotlib, and you're going to create 5 graphs that output to a PNG file. Okay. So importing those packages proper, in other words, Numpy, remember that Numpy should be imported a certain way, Matplotlib should be imported, and then what other packages you may use in this project. All right, the next 20 points is going to be using an API of your choice, and why finance works. Then we're going to collect the closing price of 5 of your favorite stock tickers for the last 10 trading days. All right. So you're going to pick a stock, doesn't matter what it is. You're going to grab the last 10 closing prices of the last 10 days of trading days, which generally means Monday through Friday, right? You're going to store those in a list, and then you're going to convert that list over to an ND array in Numpy. We're going to take that information that's in that array, and we're going to plot those 5 graphs. You can add as much information to those graphs as you want by exploring the documentation for Matplotlib. At minimum, it just needs to show those 10 data points. So if it's $5, $6, $7, kind of grows up and down on the chart. At minimum, it just needs to show those 10 parts. If you want to go above and beyond and get the documentation for Matplotlib and try to add in maybe dates, or maybe add extra information to the graph to make it look better, or different charts, whatever you want to do, I'm fine with that. It just needs to show at least those 10 data points. You're going to have the program save these graphs into a folder called charts as PNG files. Don't upload those pictures to your project folder. The project itself, when I check it out and execute it, should create those 5 graphs. That makes sense? So don't upload those with those graphs in there, which means you may want to add that folder to your git ignore. That way, when you execute it locally on your machine, doesn't matter. It's just going to not commit that folder up, and we're going to go through all that. Next 10 points is there should be a minimum of 5 commits on your project, meaning that you're committing fairly often, right? So the whole point of that part is making sure that, you get your packages installed, you go out, you figure out how to get the 5 stock tickers. Once you get that to work, that should be a commit. Once you save that information down, then that should be a commit, so that you're working in this in sections. That's the whole point of it, right? Forget my notes. I will be checking out the main branch of your project. So if you decide to use a dev branch or something like that, that's fine. Just make sure that you commit everything to the main branch. Okay? You can use a solid main branch the whole time if you want. It doesn't matter to me. Please be sure to include a requirements.txt file, which will contain all the packages needed that need to be installed. You can create that with a pip freeze at the terminal. I think I've showed you guys that before, but we'll walk through doing this inside PyCharm. The last 20 points, which is, again, a big chunk of the project, is including a README file in your project that explains what the project is, how to install those pip requirements. So you're basically writing the documentation of what you would normally see on a GitHub project, right? So you go there, you see the README file, it's got header 1, header 2, it's describing what's going on with the project, how to pip install everything, and then how to actually execute the program. That README file should be using the GitHub flavor of Markdown. So it should be written out in Markdown, all right? So that's a pretty big chunk because I'm trying to stress the importance of making sure that your README files are descriptive as to what they're doing. Again, setting you up for later in the semester. Anybody have any initial questions or comments on the project itself before we get started on it? It'll just be the last 10 days. So, right. Yeah, starting from 10 days ago going forward. And it doesn't have to be from today. It's just whenever you do the project. So whatever the last 10 trading days were. That shouldn't run into Labor Day, right? Because now we're the 15th, so we should be excluding Labor Day. Anybody online have any questions about all that? Again, we're going to walk through as much as we can get through here today in class, and then you guys may need to have some extra time to finish that up. All right, so nobody's got any questions. Let's fire up our pie chart. And we'll go ahead and create a new project. So if we create a Git repository, there's a couple different ways that you guys can do this. Let's see here. I'm going to start out here from version control. So remember, you can create your project in PyCharm, or you can start on the GitHub website, whichever way you want to do it. For this one, I'm just going to show you doing it on the GitHub website. So if we go out to github.com, I have to remember how I logged in here. If you make these private repositories, I would ask that you make them public for now, but you're welcome to make them private after the class is over, right? So if you don't want them public on yours, just at least make them public for the time of me getting the assignments. Once I make sure I've got the right account here, then you could just share it directly with me, and that wouldn't be a problem. Sure, I got this right. Okay, yeah, see, it's got me on the Prime over here, and it should be actually setting me up to something else. So anyway, once you get logged in, you can create a new repository. All right, repository name, you can call this whatever you want. It's probably going to make sense that you guys name it Project 1 or something like that, mini Project 1. When you submit this on Blackboard, that was one thing I wanted to stress over here in week 4. All you're submitting here on Blackboard is the link to your GitHub project. So realistically, you can name it whatever you want. Doesn't matter to me, because all you're going to do is submit the link, not the project files. So we're going to call this mini project 1. At least that's what I'm going to call it here for mine. We'll go ahead and make this public for now. We're going to go ahead and add a README file. We will add a git ignore file here. We're going to do this with, let's see, a template is going to be PyCharm. PyCharm should be in there. Python, yep, just do Python, that's fine. And we'll add some stuff to it. License, you guys can choose whatever. For now, we're just going to leave license as none. And we're going to use main as our default repository. So we'll hit create repository. Okay. Python. And for those of you online, I won't be able to see the chat, so just come off of mute and ask if you guys got any questions or if I'm going too fast there. All right. Okay, so you should have two files in your repository now. You should have the git ignore, and you should have the README file inside of here. All right, if you go up here to your code, you're going to see the URL for checking out your project. We'll go ahead and copy this. This is the project link that you're going to send me on Blackboard. So when I'm asking for the link, this is what I should see. I take that back. You can send me this link, or you can send me this URL up here at the top. Either one of those two will work for the project. All right. So we are going to grab this URL. Whoops. Screwed that up. There we go. Code. And we'll hit copy down here. We come into PyCharm. We're going to go to VCS at the top. And we're going to go down to Git from version control. In this repository URL here, we're going to go ahead and just copy that in. And we'll hit clone. This is going to clone this out to our local PyCharm account. Now, it's probably going to pop up and say whether or not you want to trust it. We are going to say that we do. And you could say in this window, if you already have an existing project up and running. Okay, you can ignore the tips here. Let's close that out. Look down here in the lower right-hand corner. It's going to make sure that it's setting up all the virtual environments and all that kind of stuff. Right now, we should not have a virtual environment. We shouldn't have any interpreter. We need to create that. Let this continue to finish up. All right, down here in the lower right-hand corner, you're going to see where it says no interpreter. You can either go here or you can go to the project settings and you could go and create the interpreter there. Either way, it doesn't matter. So we're going to click on this no interpreter and it should bring up an option for us to set one. So 3.9 is configured. We want to create our own. So we're going to go down here to add new interpreter and add local interpreter. And you should get this virtual environment screen here. We should have our Python 3.10 installed. We want to make sure that we're creating a virtual env environment and not actually using Conda for this. Up here in the location, you can leave all the defaults. There's nothing you need to change. Just click OK here. We'll let it create the virtual environment. Okay. If it worked, down here at the bottom, you should see Python 3.10 and then whatever the name of the project is that you created. Should see it down here. You should also see a VENV file up here at the top or folder. That means that you have a virtual environment ready for this particular file. Does anybody have any problems with that so far? The virtual environment set up? Okay. Now, we know in the Python packages, and you can do this either way you want. You can go to the terminal or you can go to Python packages, either one. But we're going to click on Python packages. We know we're going to need Numpy, so go ahead and install Numpy. And so you can just type Numpy, click here, and then click on install over here. Alternatively, you could do this through the terminal just by doing pip install Numpy. So either way works. Matter of fact, we're going to do Matplotlib that way, just so you see both ways of doing it. Okay. So Numpy should be installed. Right now it's version 1.23.3. We're going to click on terminal down here. And you should be able to get that up and running. If that is working correctly, we should be able to type in pip freeze. And it's not in the right virtual environment. Should have been unauthorized access. Didn't load the right terminal environment. Let's try this. Let's see. Okay. For whatever reason, the terminal's not in the right virtual environment. That's all right. So we're going to just go back to Python packages and we can install it here. So we know we're going to need Numpy and Matplotlib. So we'll go ahead and install that one. Yeah, pip freeze is just going to tell you all the packages that are installed. And then you can actually output that to the requirements text file. We're going to do it another way here where we'll show the project. It should allow us to save it as that. Normally that syncs right up. I'm not sure why it didn't do it right away. Go ahead and just let that finish installing. We'll grab back. I'm not sure why it's taking so long to install here. I think I need to give this VM a shot in the arm. Sure why it's taking so long. Looks like it's just getting all the widgets and everything installed. So. Remember, just because you're installing Numpy and Matplotlib, those are not the only packages getting installed, right? Those packages have a lot of dependencies inside of them. All right, so if Matplotlib worked out correctly, you should have 353 down here at the bottom. Obviously, that may change depending on when you check this out. With those out, let's go up to our file and to our settings. And if we go down here to our project and our Python interpreter, you should see that we have a bunch of packages installed in here. And so we should have Numpy, Matplotlib, and then a bunch of extra ones in here. I believe, oh, this should show in the early releases. Okay, so that should show us all the packages that are in here, and then we will show you how to export that out as a requirements here towards the end. Okay. Let's see if we could do that real quick. If this terminal pops up here. Should. Okay. If you close the pie chart, I believe I did this once before when the interpreter wasn't set up when the project started. And then just relaunch PyCharm. It should put us in the right terminal this time. Has to do with the way you check out from the GitHub repository. Sam, you guys online able to follow along?
More or less. We'll need to see the video.
Okay.
Video.
Yep. Yep. All right, so once you get it loaded up, just make sure you click on whatever your project that you called it before. And then, yeah, we should see that over there. Let's see if it pulls it up here. It might. Could be something on my setup here that's a problem. $3.10.6, right? Now we'll come back to that. All right. README file. Let's go ahead and just edit that for the time being here. So if you look in PyCharm, you're going to see this preview up here at the top. You can adjust that to go like editor only so that you can see what the PyCharm project is. For the time being, just to get this started, at the very top of the README, go ahead and copy in the header from here. So if we go out to our learning modules, here, just copy and paste this at the top of our README file. Then obviously update it for your name, something like that. Now, because you guys are using hashtags here and it's using GitHub Markdown and such, that's actually going to be like really big because it's going to do it as header 1. So you're going to see something like that in there. You can go ahead and take out the hashtags. The hashtags themselves are for comments, right? So we do that. We can always hit preview. We can see that it doesn't put it on different lines, right? So if we hit enter, you guys can adjust this file. It's also nice sometimes if you do this side by side, then you can see how it's going to adjust out, right? So you just need to play with the markdown flavor in order to get your Python file to adjust. For now, all I'm doing is just trying to get this set. We're going to go to Git and we're going to commit. And we have this commit that pops over here on the left. We're going to go ahead and commit. And here's our Git message. So we're going to say, this is our first commit. Updated the README file. right? And we can see up here in the changes, that's the only thing that we changed up here at the top. So we'll go ahead and hit commit. It's now going to prompt for your Git stuff if you haven't already got that set up inside PyCharm. Once you get it set up, it's no big deal after that. So I need to set it up inside my virtual machine here. Yes. Yep. All right. Now, once I commit, that just committed to my local installation. So I'll need to go to Git and then push. And then we want to push this out to our GitHub repository. So I go to File Git. At that point, it's going to ask you to actually log in with GitHub. So it will take you out. Again, once this is set up, it's not going to ask you to do this every time. We can say authorizing GitHub because we're already logged into the GitHub website. And we can go ahead and close that page. Go back out here to our PyCharm. And we can see that it pushed the commit out to the proper side. If everything worked, you should be able to go out here to your repository and refresh. And you should see the changes out here in your README file. Okay, so that's one commit out. The whole goal is that you're just getting your initial README out. Anytime you adjust files, set up configs, when you get your requirements file, all that, just make sure you're committing as you go along. All right, anybody got any questions on that? So we need to get started on the project itself, right? Let's get down here to our requirements. And so the first thing we got to figure out is using an API of our choice, we need to go get the stock prices, right? So you can use Y-Finance, you can use, there's all sorts of finance APIs out there. This kind of goes back to what we were talking about when we were exploring APIs. So for now, we're just going to do a Google search on Y-Finance. And if we click on this link here, which will take us to the pip project for that, you can see to install it, we just do a pip install Y-Finance. In this case, we could just install this on our package down here. So if we go down to our Python packages, and in here, we just type Y-Finance, should see Y-Finance there. Go ahead and install that. Make sure we got Y-Finance installed. Now, how you guys go about your projects, I mean, there's a million different ways, right? I'm just showing you one way of getting this set up for the mini project. So if you got a different workflow or something like that that works better, by all means. As you start working in Python, especially professionally, you guys are all going to develop your own workflows that you go through and do. Okay. So we have Y-Finance now installed. We're going to come up here to our mini project in the upper left. We'll right click on that. Go to new. And then down here to Python file. We're going to call this main. And then hit enter. Should create a main.py over here on the left-hand side. It'll ask whether or not we want to add it to the Git repository. We do. So we'll go ahead and hit add. And we should have our main.py able to be seen up here at the top. So inside our main.py, we need to copy over those initial comments. Remember that that needs to go at the top of our Python file. So if we copy that in here, we need to make sure we put those hashtags in now. They are comments. Something like this. And then we can go ahead and get started with our file. So if we go back to the Pi documentation here so that we can see how to use Y Finance. There's a real easy ticker module and a way to get started down here. So for the first part, we're just going to copy out these first couple lines, right? We're just going to paste those in. So import Y Finance as YF. This is the standard practice for Yahoo Finance. So similar to what we would do with Numpy, we would need to import that up at the top. We would go ahead and set a variable name. In this case, we're going to check out Microsoft. So if you have yf.ticker and then you put in whatever the ticker is, in this case, we're going to check out the Microsoft. If you don't know what the ticker is for your favorite stock, Google's your friend, right? So if we do mssoft.info, that's going to get us back the info for that particular package. And then in the history, this is going to get us back the historical market data. Now notice that if we run this up here at the top, we hit this run, it's going to execute. And it's going to say it finished, it didn't do anything, right? Well, it's because we didn't print, right? But what you may find helpful when you're first figuring out a new API is to actually use the Python console down here at the bottom. And this will open up the interpreter shell. And then we're going to type this same stuff up in here. So if we set up import Y Finance as YF, okay, then we do Microsoft is equal to YF.ticker. And we set this up as Microsoft like this. Hit enter. Now you'll notice over here on the right-hand side, we have this variable called MSFT, right? That we just created. If we click on this arrow, we're going to see that it's going to grab a bunch of information. So let's let it collect. It's actually going to pull a lot of information over here, right? So we're going to be able to see actions, analysis, balance sheet, earnings, info, bunch of information inside of there. If we want to just see the one little piece, we could see msft.info. Go. And it should print that information out, but it's oh, is that because the program crashed? It is. Let's do this again, but not expose that out there. Let's do that. There we go. And then if we just say our msft.info, we should get this information out, which is what you see here, the technology, the zip. And you can expand this information out like what we were showing over here. So if we go to the Microsoft one, not sure why my laptop's being so slow on that. But you should see the information for the info, which will then give you like this information that you're seeing here, right? So Microsoft, the name, the long business summary, example of what that is. You'll also be able to see information beyond that. So you'd have to scroll over here to the right. So that's why it's nice to be able to run little short commands in there. So just pulling Microsoft, it's going to pull a ton of data and a bunch of information all down at once. So we can see that now here. There's a bunch that it's pulling down. So if we click on info, we can see that the zip, it's going to pull the zip code. If we want the city, the state, the country, we can pull all this kind of information back from this particular type, stock ticker. We come back over here and say we do something like msft.info.zip and hit enter. We should get back just this information about the zip itself, the zip code. All right. It's trying to sit there and run that execution. It's taking a little bit, so we're just going to stop it. So up here at the top, what we know we want to get is a history of that historical market data. If we come back here, you can see all the different things that you can grab. So we can grab the statements, we can see what the earnings are, the option chain for that. You could use a proxy server if you want to pull that down. So you'll notice that there's a bunch of information that you can get out of here as we're going down. If you want to do multiple tickers, that's one trick within Yahoo Finance. You can just create a tickers and then pass these in. Notice that they are a tuple of the different tickers. And then from tickers, you could go tickers.tickers. And then whatever one you want to pull. So you could do that for all 5 of these, or you can create 5 variables, one for every stock ticker that we want to fetch inside of there. Same way here, if we want to pull down multiple information, we can use Yahoo Download to fetch that data. So that's what we're going to do in this case. Let's come back here to our project. And in this data, we want to pull specifically MSFT. We're going to get rid of this first part. And we wanted to pull the last 10 days, right? So let's go ahead and set that up in the proper format. We're going to do 2209. And 10 days ago would be 11th. No, 5th. Each. Do math in my head. And our end date is going to be yesterday. So 09. And this is actually going to be 14, which means we need to set this back to the 4th. Okay. And then for now, we're just going to tell it to print the data just to see what comes out of it. So we'll go ahead and run. And you'll notice that we get a bunch of information that comes back out of there, right? So we're going to get the date, we're going to get the open, the high, the close, and the volume. All right. If we look in here as to what this data comes back as, you can actually add some options in order to get things that are a little cleaner. So if you want to get a specific period, for example, 1 day, 5 day increments, how you want to get that information, you could do that. You could set up the interval. By default, it's going to pull the 1 minute intervals on those. You can set it to pull out the other ones in there. A bunch of extra information that you can set. When you come out, it's going to come as a pandas data frame. Now we're actually covering pandas data frames next week. What we want to do is just for the time being, pull that information out. So let's see here. This was a real simple way of pulling this out. We just want the closing date. See if this pulls it back like it's supposed to. We may actually have to go into the individual frame to pull it. Okay, so that pulled that, right? If we just put data and then we put in the direct column that we want, in this case, it's the adjusted close, you'll see that this is the information that comes back out of it. Everybody see that? Now, it's still going to be a pandas frame, so we need to X that data out. So if we do for price and data adjust close, print the price, see what that looks like. There we go. And so we get these values that come back out of here, right? Which means we will want something like this. Now notice that we're only getting how many days? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Because just because we set this to 10 up here, we're not getting the last 10 trading days. So you may need to bump this number back in order to get at least 10 full values out of there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're going to have to go back into August. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think we got too many now. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep. So go to the 30th. Okay. Should get us back there. Now, what we're going to do for the time being, granted, there's much better ways to do this, and we'll learn this when we have Panda frames next week. But for now, we're just going to create an empty list. So we're going to say MSFT prices equals, and then just an empty list. And then as we go through each price here, we're going to add that into our prices. So prices.append, and we're going to append our price inside of there. Okay. Once we got our list, then we can come back down here and just print MSFT prices and hit print. There we go. And there you go. We can see that we got back a list of all these individual prices. All right. This would be a good spot to go ahead and commit. So we can go ahead and commit this new change. In our comment, we could say gathered stock prices for Microsoft. And then we can go ahead and commit that change. The idea behind that is that if you ever need to go back to this version of code, at least you know this part works, right? Yeah. No, I believe it works on all of it. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's in the community edition too. The big change between the community edition and the professional one is the integrations with the different types of apps. So like Django, Flask, all of those, it's got integration built in for all of that. And again, Visual Studio Code, however you guys want to do this, doesn't matter to me whatsoever. All right, so now that we have a list of all of our different stock prices, let's go ahead and get our Numpy fired up. So if we import Numpy as NP, and then does anybody remember how we create that array? Perfect. When we don't know, we go back and look, right? So we got the documentation. We come back here and click on Numpy. If you guys did remember it, I was going to be impressed because I didn't remember it. All right, back here to Numpy. For basics, we come down here and we have what is an array, right? Creating a basic array. And so we just need to do this piece of code like this. So if we come in here and we paste that in this case, we're probably going to want something a little bit different. So if we call this our MSFT array, Numpy array, and then in here we pass in our list, which in this case is our MSFT prices. And we should now have our Numpy array, right? And if you remember, there's lots of cool things we could do with the Numpy array. In this case, we're not doing something uber cool. We're just converting it over to the Numpy array. And then what we want to do is be able to graph that out. So we could find a bunch of other information in here. And this is where Numpy is good for data science. So if we wanted to do some kind of analysis on these stock prices, for example, maybe we want to round them up to the nearest whole number. Maybe we want to calculate how many times there's different codes. If you remember unique, we talked about that, how many unique stock prices that are in there, all that kind of stuff we can find. But if we scroll clear down here to the bottom, we're going to find our Matplotlib information. There we go. And so for our Matplotlib, we need to make sure we import that. We just simply copy this over and put this up here at the top. Remember that all your imports should always be at the top, right? And remember that Matplotlib needs to be imported in this specific fashion. Again, this is worth like 5 or 10 points on the homework assignment, is making sure you import these the right way. So now that we have Matplotlib there, all we have to do is pass in our plot, which means we come down here at the bottom, we pass this in. Now we should go ahead and add some comments along the way, right? So we're going to say, create a Numpy array, which is what we do with that one liner. And then we're going to create Matplotlib graph. And so instead of A here, this is where our MSFT array goes, right? And then you'll remember that we need to show the graph, which means that we need to do our plot show. If you don't do that, you will not see anything. And so now if we run our little project, boom, we got a little graph of all of our stock prices up there in the upper right-hand corner. All right. This creates this as a PNG. Now we still need to go with the rest of the homework assignment, which is saving those out as PNG files, putting them in another folder, doing all that, right? So what we need to do is go back to our project, click on project over here on the left. We needed to put those into a folder, so new directory, and we called those what? Anybody remember what the homework assignment? Let's go back down here. They should be going into a folder called charts. So we need to create a folder called charts, right? If we go to this get ignore over here, we're going to double click that and notice that this already has a bunch of stuff in here to ignore a bunch of Python stuff. We're just going to add stuff down to the very bottom, and we're going to ignore our slash charts. And that will ignore our folder up here at the top so that we are not copying that into our repository. Yeah. Yep, that's the alternative, right? So we could either do that or we could just tell it to anything inside of there is what we're going to ignore. You could do it either way, however you want to do it. If you want to do things inside of it, you would do something like star there, and then it would just import or ignore the files within, but not the actual folder, however you want to do that. So we'll go ahead and save that. Okay. Like you see over here in the lower right hand side, it looks like you're using Numpy. Do you want to turn scientific mode on? We can. So if we say use scientific mode, all that's going to do is over here on the right, allow you to see your graphs and your charts and the stuff that we already saw up here at the top. So it's kind of handy if you're looking at different variables and pulling different stuff out. All right, we're going to close that down for now. Okay, so back to our main project. Now we need to save this out as a PNG file, right? And if we go back here to our documentation that we were using, it shows us how to put it out, but it doesn't show us how to actually spit that out to a PNG file, right? So to do that, we click on this official documentation, open that up in a new tab. And so now we have our Matplotlib. And if we look at examples, we can do just a simple line graph, which is what we've been doing. And you can see all these different ones out here. So you can see like line graphs, you can see how to set up colors and shapes, and however you guys want to do it, that's fine. At this point, I just needed to do the basics, but we need to export that as a PNG file. So the best way to do this kind of stuff is just Matplotlib export to PNG. All right. If we come in here, set the documentation, we can see how to save the figure out. So to do this, we need to call the function savefig and be able to spit that stuff out. So if we scroll down here, you'll notice there's a bunch of different examples in there on how we can spit that out. We're going to click at this example. It was a really good example. There's a reason I was having to use the documentation here. Let's see. Yeah, you could do it that way, and then you could set it out as a PNG file just to save it out. it's really, if I recall, just as simple as doing this. So if we come in here, we have plot show, we have plot save, and then we just need to tell it where we want to save it. We're going to end up using path, but for now, we're just going to test this. So we're going to call this msft.png. And then go ahead and run this again. Should see the C. We should have had that file right over here. Spit that out. Did we get a PNG file? Did not. Usually once you click in here, if it created a new file, it pop up in red and then ask you if you want to add it. All right. Remember, being fairly simple. It wasn't like it was a real complicated thing. Yeah, just save as PNG. Yeah, if you wanted to set the image. Oh, okay. Yes, thank you. You have to do show after you do the save. So there you go. Microsoft popped up now. Okay, so yes, you should see that when you come in here. You should get this red file. This is your picture. If you double click, you'll notice it's blank. That's because if we are going to show it to the end user, that show needs to go after this. So we can do that. We can go ahead and run this. Should get this to pop up. And if we have this Microsoft file over here, if we double click, we should notice that we have this PNG file now, right? So we got it to go ahead and save this file out here in the local file. We're going to go ahead and delete that. And we need to make sure it goes into our charts. So charts / msft.png. There you go. Now we should use path and some things like that to make sure that that path exists and things like that. I'm not going to do that for today. You guys should build that into your code. We're just going to make sure that this goes ahead and saves it out. We don't necessarily need to show that we're doing this plot. If you want to, for debug purposes, you certainly could, but the homework assignment just needs you to export that PNG file out. So if we go to charts, you should just see it out there. Come on, refresh. There you go. And inside charts, we have our Microsoft PNG. So if you've got this one still out here, I need to make sure it deletes. There we go. Delete, delete. Okay. And this file up here, notice how it is yellow or gold. That means that it's part of the get ignore file, and so it will not be added to your repository. So if we go to get and then commit, we'll notice that under unversioned files, we will not see that all these other files are added to our project. Okay, so we should do a commit here that says added the export of the added. Here we go. We can go ahead and commit and push that if we want to. So we commit it and push it. All right. We go out here, we double check our project, refresh. And so we should have this main.py. Notice that we do not have the folder of charts, right? So because it did not actually commit the folder of charts, we would need to write code to create that charts folder before we actually tried to save that folder out. Anybody have any questions on what we've done so far? How about you guys online? You guys able to follow along? Hello?
Yep.
Okay. So as you can see there, we were able to get at least one stock ticker going. We may want to gather that information. Now remember, in the Yahoo Finance side of things, that if you want to grab information of multiple tickers, there's better ways to do that. But if you want to just go through a loop of the way that we currently grab the information, that's fine. You know, like you said, here you can return multiple ticker objects and then you don't have to have individual ones. We just want to save that information out. So what we're doing here is basically this line, right? And we save that into our data as SPY Apple, but if you wanted to pull just one specific, you could, or you could filter that information out to create your own folders or lists, convert those lists to Numpy arrays, then go ahead and use Matplotlib to plot those out. Now, if you go out to Matplotlib, there's obviously much better graphics that you can put out, and I want you to kind of go out and explore that. So if you look out here in this, you can figure out how you can pad the outside edge. You can adjust the box color size. You can adjust colors if you want to. Anything to add more information in there. It's going to be pretty basic right now because we haven't covered pandas frames, right? That's something that we're going to do next week, which will basically build on this project so that you can build better graphs because now everything's in a pandas data frame. Anybody have any questions on what we've got? All right, again, we just have a piece of the puzzle here to get you guys started. You'll need to make sure that you have all these different key points. If you guys run into some issues, let me know. Like right now, the requirements deal, I'm not sure why my terminal is not popping up, but it's really simple to use. Like if I came over here to my command, CMD. And if I type in something like pip freeze, we should see everything in there. So let's say, and this is on my overall pip installation or my overall Python installation, not on my project. So say I do something like pip install numpy. I'll figure out why my terminal's not working here. That's strange. It's usually pretty easy. All right, so now if I do pip freeze, we'll see all the packages that are installed. So it's just going to say numpy 1.2.3. All I have to do is do a pip freeze and output that to a requirements.txt. And now if I look in my folder here, you'll see I have a requirements.txt. And inside there, we'll have the output of all that. So it's really just this simple command here. If you could do that in the terminal, it's pip freeze greater than, and then requirements.txt. That will create this requirements.txt file that you need inside your project. And you just need to do that every time you add a package into pip, that you just go up there and rerun that command. It's really simple. If you come down here to the terminal, you just type it in and it does it. For whatever reason, this isn't syncing up with my my virtual environment. So I'll try to figure out. It's just a setting inside my PyCharm. All right. So that should get you the requirements. Let's see, is there anything else I didn't cover? The README, if you guys come up here and do GitHub flavor markdown. There you go. And so you can see what is a GitHub flavor markdown, what is markdown in and of itself. And it's pretty simple to figure out how to use markdown. There's a ton of markdown cheat sheets down there. So you can just use markdown cheat sheet. It's perfect. And so this one here is just a markdown. So this is how you get your headers. This is how you do bold text, block quotes, ordered lists, code, that kind of stuff. So code will be one specifically that you guys would want to use, right? In this case, you're going to say something like, if we come back down here to our project, go to our Git, you're going to have something like pip install -r requirements .text. And you're going to notice over here when it outputs, it puts it in that format that you guys are used to seeing inside of a README file, right? So you come over here and see that. If you come back here, if you just have regular syntax and text, these are all headers. If you want just regular text, you can set that up with different bolds. You can get your different cheat sheets and set all that kind of stuff up. So you can do superscript, subscript, however you want to set up your code. But play with it, practice doing some this. That's why it's worth 20 points of this project, is being able to cleanly write README files is a, dare I say, art. Like it takes good practice. If you want a format or you need a template, just Google search any other GitHub project that you're playing with, right? So go out to Y-Finance's GitHub project, look at their README file and say, okay, this is the format I should follow. It's a standard format and template. But put good directions in here. So you would tell them to check out your project. You would tell them the first thing they need to run is pip install requirements. That way it installs all your packages. And then you could tell them how to execute your script. And so you could just say Python and then whatever the name of your Python file is. Anybody have any questions on what I'm looking for in the homework assignment? How about online? Anybody have any questions on anything we're looking for in the homework assignment?
No questions.
It's pretty basic, but there's lots of moving parts, right?
I have
And
a
that's the whole
question.
point, is these are now mini projects, not homework assignments. They turn into little mini projects along the way. All right, I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with next week. Next week, we're going to cover pandas. So we're going to take this one step further. And instead of just taking out the adjusted closing date information that we did today, we're going to actually be able to work with that pandas frame and be able to adjust that and plot the entire adjusted close line graphs to see how it adjusted throughout the day. So we can plot much more advanced graphs in there. All right, I'll stop the recording.